Why are zombie players leaving? To figure out this question, we first need to figure out why zombies even became so popular in the first place. So shout out XD. Let's get into this.
Right at the beginning of its life, the flame that was Call of Duty Zombies suddenly
Was
exploded
huge.
into something much bigger.
Bigger than MP, I'll tell you that, brother.
And the fuel that caused that explosion was Pack-a-Punch.
Yeah. Started all in
Now,
Doris,
this
man.
obviously makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it's probably not for the reason that you think. I mean,
Let's see
sure,
it.
Pack-a-Punch allowed you to upgrade your weapons and progress further into the rounds. But I think it also introduced something far more important to the game mode.
A whole layer of
Quests.
replayability and quests. Yeah, that's true.
As with previous maps before, you could only really get your weapons, perks, and then kill zombies. That was it. Despite each map having its own unique visuals and layout, the experience was largely the same.
I mean, that's why everybody prefers Doris over the other three World at War maps, right? Pack-a-Punch, all your weapons. You know, this was a huge thing that came out back right at the beginning, really, in 2008 for Call of Duty Zombies.
Pack-a-Punch changed that, as
Yep.
COD Zombies needed a way to morph into a more complex and interesting game mode. Pack-a-Punch bridged that gap from casual to complex gameplay.
Yeah, it completely changed the game.
As Pack-a-Punch really is the perfect catering to both casual and complex players, as it essentially gives casual players double the weapon variety, whilst also giving complex players something extra to do.
It made it unique from multiplayer, 100%, you know? It was
However,
really
over
something
time,
cool.
Pack-a-Punch gradually saw a shift towards more complex gameplay as
Right.
quests got more complicated.
Yeah.
And I think this is because, with time, Pack-a-Punch became more and more a method of storytelling within the map. Which
That's
is
true.
why casuals tend to stick with the first three games, where the quests are more simple and less time consuming to do.
I remember when Shadows of Evil came out and so many people were complaining how difficult it was just to unlock Pack-a-Punch. But it adds so much story to that map, and now people consider it a masterpiece, right?
But overall, the introduction of Pack-a-Punch paved the way for zombies to progress into the complex
Into a
and
narrative.
quest-driven game mode
Yeah.
that we know today.
That's very true.
Through the introduction of Easter eggs in Black Ops 1, and then later the introduction of Wonder Weapon and Specialist quests in Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3.
Exactly.
Had it not been for the introduction of Pack-a-Punch, I don't think zombies would be anywhere near as interesting and replayable
Very true.
as it is today.
I don't think they would have even continued it in Black Ops 1, even though they had plans already in Doris to make a Paris map, a Call of the Dead type map, and also a bunch of different maps that you would see later on. So it's true. Pack-a-Punch changed the whole way. And here, what do we got next? The perks, yes.
Perks within zombies have always
Yes.
been a hotly debated topic.
Of course.
Demonstrated no less by my most popular video.
For real, bro,
But
yeah.
whether or not you agree or disagree on what the best perks are, I think we can all agree that the change in perk system from BO1 to BO2 changed the perk system forever.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
ever since that change, I don't think the perk system has ever been able to reach the heights that it was at in Black Ops 1.
Well, it's even in Black Ops 2, they added in a lot of perks, but a lot of those perks were really forgettable. Like some of the worst in the whole series, like Who's Who, Tombstone, bro. It was really only Electric Cherry that was like the big deal, and Vulturate as well, but that didn't get added until BO6, right?
And so let me break it down for why I think Black Ops 1 had the best perk system. So, this is what I call the hierarchy of perks.
Yeah.
Essentially, at the top, you've got Juggernog and Quick Revive.
For
or if
sure.
you're playing on
Necessity.
co-op, just
Yeah.
Jug.
Absolutely.
In the middle, you've got your secondary perks. These are the ones that you typically choose depending on how you want to play the game.
Exactly.
And finally, you have the more filler, not so good perks at the bottom.
Like Deadshot.
Now, I think a good perk system needs to have this hierarchy.
Yeah.
One or two at the top, majority in the middle, and then a few at the bottom.
Yeah.
The top serve as a method to get the ball rolling. You buy them, you feel the immediate effect, and you naturally want to buy more.
Jug and Quick
I also
Revive,
feel
yeah.
it is important to have these necessary perks to add to the feel of progression within the game. Then
Right.
we move on to the middle section, or the secondary perks. the most important section. These are the ones that make a great perk system.
It gives it the
more
flavor.
balanced perks you can have in this section, the better, as it allows for more replayability. And it's also what gets you most excited, because there are no correct choices here. You grab
it all depends on how you play,
how you want to play the game, and what you prefer the most.
And I think that's what Blundell saw in Black Ops 4, but I think the biggest hindrance to his system was the 4 perk limit. That was what made it so difficult, because instead they should have gone with this idea of kind of like what Pack-a-Punch did, is add another narrative. So don't just make it so that the perk limit is infinite. Make it so that there's another way for you to get those perks after the 4 or 5 perk limit. You know, that would have been really something special.
And then the bottom perks are there just to sort of make up that hierarchy.
I think that's why people love Origins, is because Origins has that red dig up system where you're able to get each of these perk slots, and it has this meaningful benefit, and it actually means something when you have multiple perks. So it's true. We're going into Nuketown.
Now, this is what that hierarchy looked like for
Black
Ops
for
1.
BO1.
With 4 perks in the middle slot.
Yep.
Now, when Black Ops 2 came along, we lost PhD and got a major buff to Double Tap 2.0.
That's true.
Which actually changed the hierarchy into this.
Oh,
it
interesting.
Eliminated a choice slot by placing Double Tap 2.0 in this weird sort of extra layer, where it's not as necessary as something like Juggernaut or Quick.
It was always the 3rd perk that you bought, and I think that's what Jason Blundell saw also in BO3, and that's why he wanted to basically integrate them into the core mechanics. But for some reason, he didn't do that. He didn't integrate Double Tap. He barely integrated Speed Cola until the community was telling him to do it. So it's like, it makes you wonder why the BO4 system was so flawed in the first place, you know?
Revive. But it is still kind of important to have, because it does make every weapon twice as powerful.
That's true.
And it is now noticeably better than Speed Cola and Stamina Up. And what that essentially did was eliminate a choice slot, meaning that you now essentially just choose between Speed Cola and Stamina Up for your final perk. And then what tends to happen is you tend to favor either Speed Cola or Stamina Up over the other. So in the end, you end up just rocking the same perks every time you play the game. And subsequent Black Ops 2 maps either substituted these perks for others, moved them around, or took them off entirely. Never really getting us back to what it was like in Black Ops 1.
That's true.
And still keeping us with this weird sort of 4-tiered perk system. And then when Black Ops 3 came along, Double Tap 2.0 essentially moved down from alternate ammo types, and Widow's Wine took its place.
That's
true. Fixing nothing. And I mean, do I even need to really say anything about Black Ops 4 either?
And then I think the microtransactions came in BO3 at that point. And remember, the whole community was so excited about perks like Banana Colada. And then Blundell was like, instead of making it a perk, let's put it into a Gobblegum microtransaction. And I think that is where the community definitely lost that layer of narrative quest building for sure.
All this resulted from that single change from Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 2, and I think completely threw the perk system out of whack to the point where it has never really recovered to how good it was in Black Ops 1.
Well, because now in Cold War and BO6, it's just, let's just put everything in there, and then you get all the perks by like round 20, and it doesn't really feel like a narrative achievement or a conquest in terms of actually delineating an experience unique amongst each of the zombies maps. It's just another thing to do, and I think that stale type of mechanics across each of the maps is for sure what's changed zombies forever and what's delineated a lot of players from the game mode.
And eventually led to a considerably lackluster perk system in Black Ops 4, and then a marginally improved one in Cold War and Black Ops 6, which unfortunately took away a quite exciting part of the game mode. And I think this is also the reason why that Black Ops 1 still holds up even to this day,
I mean, Black Ops 1 was adding in perks that were extremely fundamental. Ascension is still, to this day, the only zombies map that has ever added 2 perks to a zombies map that are incredible. Stamina up and PhD. And then on top of that, you have all of these amazing perks like Mule Kick and Moon as well. I mean, Shangri-La and Call of the Dead, they didn't add any perks, but Call of the Dead added Deadshot, so... Regardless, though, BO1 changed it the most, and that's kind of sad because it's only really 3 perks that did that.
In comparison with the newer titles.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Now, throughout the years, especially the Black Ops 2/Black Ops 3 era, we received a lot of great maps,
Yeah.
but none even came close to just a singular one of these.
Mob of the Dead, baby. Yes! This map changed the game of
To
zombies.
understand why
It's
Mob of the
so
Dead
good.
is not just a great map,
Yeah.
but possibly one of the most important, you have to take a
Changed
look
the
at
whole
what came
formula.
before it.
Yeah.
Transit and
Die
Die Rise.
Yeah.
The release and DLC 1 maps for Black Ops 2, both of which are tone setters for the game, and yet really could not have been much worse.
Yeah.
Both just confused messes of maps that were way too ambitious for their own good. With
Yeah.
the nature of the climax of Moon, followed by the disappointing launch, Black Ops 2 was heading downhill fast.
Really bad.
But right
Yeah.
around the corner,
I mean, Chad, this is the reason why Jimmy Zielinski was basically on the way out. And it's like, it's never confirmed whether Jimmy or Jason were fired. I doubt either of them were. They probably just stepped off for their own reasons. And honestly, I believe Jimmy Zielinski was just too ahead of his time for the Xbox 360's technology, really.
was not only an amazing map, but a revolution to the game mode. You
Yeah.
see, Mob of the Dead was different to anything we had ever seen before it. It was complex and quest
It was a narrative. Yeah.
and essentially paved the way for every single zombies map that followed it. Just
Yeah.
like the analogy I gave for Pack-a-Punch, Mob of the Dead didn't bridge the gap. It jumped the river entirely.
Exactly.
A bold move that paid dividends.
Oh,
As
for
almost
real.
every map that followed Mob of the Dead
Did the
built
same
upon
thing.
this formula,
Yeah.
generating the golden era of zombies
I agree.
and changing the formula of the game mode entirely.
Yeah.
The roaring success that was Black Ops 3 and everything that came with it. It was a crunch moment, as even if Mob of the Dead released one DLC later, I'm not sure it would have been able to have the impact that it had.
I fully agree. And I think it's also Mob of the Dead as to why people enjoy Buried after the fact, with all the previous Victus maps being so mid at best, you know? Buried is an incredible zombies map, but also a lot of people don't realize that Buried was actually created by David Vonderhaar because of Jimmy Zielinski's leaving Black Ops 2 during Treyarch and all of that. So it's quite interesting how it was really Blundell and Vonderhaar themselves that created this incredible masterpiece in terms of creating zombies into this narrative sandbox. It was really
Let alone
something.
resurrect the game mode
Yeah.
entirely.
I agree. I agree. Mob of the Dead is the reason I have a zombies channel, bro. It's true. It's so
Up
true.
until the end of Black Ops 2, there was no way to carry anything over into future games of zombies.
Yeah.
Once the game over screen came up, that was it.
Yeah.
Time to start over again. But that all changed with the release of Black
Origins.
Ops 3,
Yes.
Gobblegums.
And Gobblegums too. Yep.
Gobblegums essentially act as special powers within zombies,
Yeah.
granting you a wide variety of abilities. Some great, some not so great. Where I would say at launch, there was a good balance
Board
of
games,
Gobblegums.
man.
Most were not very good or kinda okay.
At the beginning,
Some
it was
were
pretty bad.
good,
Yeah.
and then there were a few that were exceptional.
Like
Essentially
Perkaholic,
inviting
yeah.
you to play the game over and over again
grind-
try and
grind
earn
those,
more
yeah.
liquid diviniums, and then try your luck again and again at getting that rare Perkaholic.
Yeah.
But as the DLCs progressed, Gobblegum saw a significant shift towards overpoweredness,
True.
to the point where Gobblegums took away all progression within a game.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you don't have to run them, but let's say, for example, you're doing
It's that same idea I hear from Black Ops 6 where people are like, oh, you don't have to run the meta weapon in the loadout, but it's a game changer. Like, why would I want to run the really garbage M1911 when I can spawn in with the best shotgun in the game? Like, you know, I hate that argument because it's just so null, in my opinion.
an Easter egg. Why would you go through all that effort and heartache when you could just pop a few Gobblegums and be done with it?
Yeah, exactly.
What this ultimately did was entice Treyarch to place less emphasis on the game and map mechanics themselves, and instead more on these accessory things within the game like
and
Gobblegums
microtransactions.
and loadouts.
Yep,
the
true.
effect of this wasn't immediately clear in Black Ops 3, but it certainly was in the games that followed, where even now, the map mechanics themselves have barely evolved at all since Black Ops 3.
That's true.
Because the creative energy has gone into things that you can't even change once the game has started.
And what's interesting is the EU currently is actually deciding to ban COD points right now because they are basically psychologically manipulating children into not understanding an actual currency price for each of these things. So it's quite interesting because this could actually mean the death of Call of Duty HQ, or they're just going to actually have to start advertising things correctly. And so while it's interesting that Call of Duty publishers have been able to exploit their audience so long with this, it does seem like this might be coming towards some sort of end within Call of Duty very, very soon. And that could be exciting, especially for the zombies mode.
I suppose the perfect way to sum up Gobblegums is to liken them to the story of Icarus. An amazing idea and addition to the game mode that unfortunately flew a little too close to the sun.
And Icarus was literally in the game as well. It's like too on the nose, you know? Yeah, it's so true. Especially because it's like everybody was super excited for BO6 Gobblegums. And man, those BO6 Gobblegums, there's not really any that are incredibly exceptional. It's all sort of mid outside of like Wonder Bar and like Perkaholic. And it just kind of makes the games really boring, you know? It doesn't really add that level of flavor that Black Ops 3 did, where they didn't really add all of these incredible Gobblegums until the end of the game's life cycle. And I think that's why a lot of people have fallen off of BO6 for sure.
To fix something that ain't broken is a saying that has been attributed to Treyarch a lot over the years. But I think the most infamous and long-lasting impact of this came with the release of Black Ops 4.
Yes.
The point system change.
Oh, yes.
All the previous topics I've covered in this video, while some are a little strange and maybe a bit counterintuitive, I can at least understand the idea. But this one is different.
Yeah.
It still baffles me to this day why this change was made. And here's why. The OG perk system worked like this. 100 points for a headshot, 70 for a neck shot, 60 for a chest shot, 50 for everything else, and then 130 for a melee. And the most crucial, 10 points for every non-lethal hit to the zombie.
That is literally what made the weak guns useful, because it didn't matter how powerful a gun was. That is what gave every gun a purpose. And that one thing, the non-lethal shots being 10 points, that one removal, in my opinion, has destroyed the fabric of what Call of Duty Zombies is, and why it literally forces you to run a meta rather than people just being like, oh, just run a pistol. Why would I when I'm going to actively be hindered at it by every single zombie that I take out? You know?
And I'll explain in a minute why this is so important. Now, BO4's new point system works like this. 90 base points for every time you kill a zombie, plus 30 for a headshot, and plus 60 for a melee. A slight increase for head and melee kills, but what it got so terribly wrong was the omission of that extra 10 points for every non-lethal hit. Because this little mechanic is responsible for ensuring a balanced weapon variety. As less powerful weapons may not kill as fast or reliably, but can be used instead for getting points. Meaning that every weapon within the game has some use depending on how you want to play. Whereas in Black Ops 4, you may as well just use some more powerful weapons, as they will give you the same amount of points anyway.
Well, and it also means that the best point weapon in the long run is actually the wonder weapon. And that is the whole basis as to why Zombies is so boring to play now. Because outside of your meta loadout weapon that you run, at least Black Ops 4 gave you really bad loadout weapons. But now in Cold War and BO6, if you're not running the meta weapon, you're also getting less points. And if you're not going for the wonder weapon, you're also getting less points, because the wonder weapon equates to the weapon that gives you the highest amount of points, which means that it makes 99% of the weapons completely redundant, which makes it no point to go for the mastery camo of the game anymore. There's really no point in terms of doing anything other than making sure you know the meta loadout weapon and getting the best wonder weapon, which to me has destroyed the fabric of COD Zombies, especially now that you have ammo boxes. You never even need to have the necessity to swap out any of your weapons and to try any of the other weapons in the game. It completely takes out a huge layer of replayability and makes it so that the only thing there is the quests. And with the quests as well, there's been a massive downgrade in quality. And so that's why I think so many people are just completely giving up, because there's not anything really to see. Nobody's doing pack-a-punch every single gun challenges in Black Ops Cold War and BO6, also because of the elongated whole strategy that you need to get triple tier pack-a-punch to make your gun even viable and to get the gold rarity. This is why Call of Duty Zombies is dying. And if they make a Black Ops 2 sequel mode without triple pack-a-punch, without gold rarities, and with the old point system, that is the only way I could see it bringing back the Zombies audience, to be honest. The Warzone mechanics have truly taken away what made Zombies so special at its initial core.
I hear people say all the time, oh man, the Black Ops 4 weapons just don't seem as powerful as the ones in the other games.
Yeah.
Which may be true, but I also think the way this point system works makes you perceive it in that way as well.
Exactly.
Overall, what this did was destroy a lot of replayability, as there was only really one strategy to play. Just grab the most powerful weapon and use it from spawn. Which I think was truly the greatest downfall in Black Ops 4.
I agree.
No matter what map you played,
and it boggles my mind that Activision and Treyarch are still implementing this system into Call of Duty Zombies today. That is one of the sole reasons why you see people playing Black Ops 3 and before, is because at least you can pick up a weapon and use it to generate points. There's just some sort of reason with Treyarch now where they feel like if they add the old point system, it gets through the sort of elongation of the entire game process of triple pack-a-punch too fast. And I completely disagree with that. I miss playing an old Zombies game by like round 17 and I have like 25,000 points. That would never happen in modern COD Zombies.
This was always the best way to play. And so what in theory should be great maps with some awesome mechanics no longer have their own unique strategies.
Exactly.
It's just so sad.
It's the
I feel
whole
if these
same
maps
thing.
had the OG point system, Black Ops 4 would be seen as one of the greats.
I agree. I actually fully agree with that. Yeah, it's so true. And where are we headed now? Modern
Since
COD
Black Ops
Zombies.
4, I don't believe there has been any significant changes made to zombies.
I agree.
I mean, Cold War was about as filler as it gets, and it's too early to tell for Black Ops 6.
Well, I think Black Ops 6 has also seen a massive decline in storyline narration and also just weapons. And that's why it's like most people, in terms of the content that they post, is just getting camos or trying out random things for certain weapons. But it'll never matter if it's not better than the meta now. Because we've gone into a system with the Warzone meta,
will Black Ops
just
6
lifeless.
bring the next big change to zombies? I guess only time will tell.
Nope. Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to check out the downfall of Call of Duty Zombies. So this video was made just at the launch of BO6, so it's going to be interesting to see.
When people talk about the downfall of zombies, Black Ops 4 generally takes the most heat. But I think that Black Ops 4 is more the product of the direction that the game mode was heading in, and not so much the actual root cause of the downfall itself. To find what the real cause was, we actually have to turn to the much beloved Black Ops 3.
Yeah. I think Black Ops 3 definitely started it. I think it's true. I think it's true. And it's mainly because of the microtransactions. But it's also like you get rid of that narrative that you see in the specialists. weapons and all that, you know? There's so much that's missing.
Now, the period of zombies from World at War all the way up until Black Ops 2 saw a lot of evolution.
Yeah.
But one thing that always remained the same was the overarching theme that was the lack of control you had over the game.
Yes.
And what I mean by this is things like the following. You have to start on round 1, you have to start with the starting pistol, and there's no way to shortcut opening the map and getting set up. Basically, you are at the mercy of the game mode, which means that there is not a lot of variety in terms of how you play. I mean, sure, everyone's got their own strategy, but you've still got to work for everything. I
remember when Jason Mundell did an interview about Black Ops 2 and BO3, and he said, ultimately, the goal in Call of Duty Zombies is to die. It is to game over. And it's so interesting how with modern COD Zombies now, we have that exfil option where it's not even to die now. The whole point of modern COD Zombies is to grind camos and XP to bring back into Warzone. And that was my worst fear for COD Zombies because it's no longer a narrative. It is a grinding camo mode now.
There are minimal to no shortcuts, which does get a little boring after a while.
Yeah.
So to counteract this, it was important to innovate and make each map unique in its own right. Yep. Whether it be Easter eggs, new map dynamics, pack-a-punch quests, just something to make the map stand out.
I think this was such a big, important detail that Jason Mundell used to always say to the zombie YouTubers. He said, I would rather have a good zombies map or a bad zombies map that generates discussion, like a Transit or like Origins, rather than having mid-tier zombies map that people just forget about in a week. And it's really sad because that is what Call of Duty Zombies basically is today.
Which is what allowed zombies to evolve as much as it did.
Yeah.
I mean, just take a look at the difference between Knockdown Toten and Origins. They're almost two completely different games, and yet are only about 4 or 5 years apart.
It's
but
true.
That would all
the evolution was insane
with the release of Black Ops 3.
Yeah. And like, even though Gobblegums was a massive evolution, you just didn't see anything change with like the perks or the base mechanics or anything like that. Like, it was just sad. Like, Widow's Wine was the only thing. Pizza's favorite Gobblegum is something like Killing Time, where it just pauses the game for 10 seconds. I feel like the emphasis of Gobblegums used to be fun gimmick side effects, which is kind of now devolved into how much faster can I beat the game and have the meta, right? And that's why over time also with this perk argument, you've seen how a lot of speedrunners only prioritize even just stamina up now because that is the main speed running perk. And so it's interesting because I wonder if that will ever change, if modern COD Zombies will go back towards the OG type of perk system where they add only a specific way to get more than 5 perks. I doubt it, though.
And the focus was certainly more on the maps themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we had Perkaholic right from the beginning, but even that felt like more of a treat than a common feature in a zombies game.
Yeah.
And that's more or less how I think Gobblegums were meant to be. Yeah. Something that might provide some assistance here or there, or just something to play around and have fun with.
But not something you can pop every game.
I think the perfect example of this can be found in those myth-busting series made by
yes,
many YouTubers
literally,
like
yes.
Pizza, where they just sort of play around with and test different random theories.
People love this. I mean, it's just so sad now because when Gobblegums are made, it's just like, okay, in the Tomb, the most recent one was like, it activates AATs more faster. But it's like, that's not really like something that adds this cool element to the gameplay like a Killing Time does. And the fact that like Codename Pizza is even asking still for Killing Time to come back into the mode is exactly what I mean by that. It just, they've completely missed the mark as to what made the appeal towards Gobblegums in the first place.
Gobblegums, which I think is the perfect addition to a game of zombies.
Exactly.
I mean, you've got the maps themselves to enjoy, but now you've also got this extra thing to play around with, even if they get a little too boring as well.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. You really don't see that layer of gameplay anymore.
But the problem is about things like Gobblegums is that they are a very slippery slope. It doesn't take much before people start finding exploits or the so-called meta when it comes to these things. And as we got further and further into the DLC season of Black Ops 3, more and more powerful Gobblegums started to get released.
Yeah.
Until they just decided to completely open the floodgates.
And now it's all about the meta. It's not ever about what can we do to make the game change or have some fun effects. It's all what can we do to make the player get to higher rounds. And ultimately, that has actually caused the slope to get larger and larger and slippier, because now people don't really care about those gimmick effects anymore. It's all about a meta.
We have some of the most overpowered and ridiculous Gobblegums you could ever come up with. And they are now frequently relied upon, especially for Easter eggs, which I think is really not a good thing, because instead of experiencing all the unique features and challenges that a map has, you can just blitz right through them, which takes away from the uniqueness of each map and places more focus on strategizing what Gobblegum that you're going to use, instead of how you're going to navigate the map itself.
I think that's why there's a massive fascination right now to Black Ops 3 no gums records, as I just watched Game Like a Dylan's Moon record, and it was just so much more interesting to watch that than just someone popping a shopping free. But I also think this delineates why Black Ops 6 is also falling off, because of the Gobblegums sort of not necessarily being extremely amazing or extremely gimmicky. They're all just right in the middle, where they give you one usage of something and that's it. There's no real personality to them. And I think that's why most people don't really even use them for Easter egg speedruns, also because of how insanely busted so many mechanics are in Black Ops 6, like the mutant injection being the best thing that we have ever had for any wonder weapon, any trap ever to get to high rounds in Call of Duty Zombies, literally making you borderline invincible. And then also on top of that, just how easy it is as well just to continuously farm them and gather salvage. It's just so many different mechanics that have definitely contributed to what Zombies is today in the modern world.
Fortunately for Black Ops 3, however, the amazing maps and mechanics of the game, as well as the fact that everyone seems to look at Black Ops 3 through rose-tinted glasses, I think meant that these issues weren't exactly obvious at the time. But that's where Black Ops 4 comes in.
Yeah. And BO4 made it way worse, because you could just spawn them instantly. You didn't need a Gobblegum machine. Like, at least Black Ops 3, you could move it out,
to be a lot higher on things like Gobblegums and loadouts. What I like to think of as accessories within the game, I feel caused a lot of Treyarch's creative energy to be diverted away from the maps themselves. And placed more on these accessory items within the game.
Exactly. And Widow's Wine was the only perk for BO3, so Call of Duty and Treyarch felt like they had to sort of innovate on that, and the Black Ops 4 just completely changed the systems and completely made it way too complicated, putting the progression outside of the game, which made so many people not want to continue and just basically play more popular games like Fortnite at the time. And I think that is where the massive amount of casual players have left from Call of Duty Zombies, still from that point since Revelations into the Black Ops 4 launch.
Black Ops 4, we now have specialists. We can now spawn in with something other than the starting pistol.
It takes away the story as well from specialists, just being able to spawn in. Like, there's no story between, like, the chakrams or the hammer or the scepter of Ra. It's all the same.
And why we saw the removal of crutch perks like Juggernog. Because what's the difference between spawning in with Juggernog already in Black Ops 4 and popping a round 1 perkaholic on Black Ops 3?
That's true.
There really is none. So why even bother putting Juggernog in the game?
Well, it's interesting because Blundell was trying to take away a meta from Black Ops 4, and yet the system was still so broken that Black Ops 4 even had a stronger meta like Dying Wish and Winter's Wail and Stamina, which was even worse than Black Ops 3, which is why the system ultimately failed.
Seem to be perfectly happy popping a perkaholic on round 1 in Black Ops 3. So surely would be perfectly fine just spawning in with it on Black Ops 4. In fact, it's one less step. Which is why I don't think all these things like the removal of Juggernog and crutch perks in Black Ops 4 was really the issue with the game.
Nope.
It was the overarching theme of putting more onus on these accessory things instead of the maps themselves.
It was ultimately microtransactions, if you want to boil it down. Like, that was really the overindulgence of constantly creeping up microtransactions, I think, is the main reason why Zombies is dying out. And that's why I've also said, like, people have always given me a ton of nonsense for basically saying that Zombies is like the least monetizable audience in Call of Duty between Warzone and multiplayer, and I would not be shocked if one day Zombies just gets completely axed and discontinued because it's not generating enough revenue for Call of Duty. Like, sure, we've had the most popular DLC with Chronicles, but it's like, It's easier for Call of Duty just to make some garbage bundle that the Warzone and multiplayer players will buy rather than making a massive multiplayer 8 remastered map experience like Chronicles. So it just goes to show they want to create the most amount of revenue with the least amount of development time.
I mean, at Black Ops 4 launch, apart from 9, we got 3 quite frankly lackluster maps, which really had no right at all to be that bad. Not to mention as well, just the overall mechanics of Black Ops 4 being much worse, as well as the downgraded point system as well. But I mean, surely nobody would care about that. We have loadouts now. And to be honest, I just think it got worse in Cold War.
I agree.
Sure,
and in BO6.
Cold War's mechanics are great. But to be honest, I don't think you could make a more boring and uninteresting set of maps if you tried. But at the same time, look at all these new accessories we got. Perk tiers, creator class, new specialists.
And you see how everything he's talking about is outside of the game progression, whereas before, like pre-BO3, all of that was in-game, right? And I think just like taking specialists and diluting it really to just like the wand abilities like Frost Blast and Energy Mine and Ether Shroud just makes the game so boring. There's no narrative. There's no like story behind it. Completely takes out all the lore.
I mean, the list just goes on. So I mean, who cares about the maps? We have all these new things to play around with. And you know, they may be great at first, but these accessory things suffer from the same thing that the maps themselves do. They pretty quickly become boring and uninteresting.
And also it becomes a meta, right? So it's like, why would I care about Frost Blast when Ring of Fire is going to be the greatest thing? And so they tried eliminating that in Black Ops 6 and Vanguard and all that, like taking out Ring of Fire, let's say in like MW3 Zombies and also in BO6. Doesn't matter. There's going to be a new meta. It's not that Ring of Fire was the inherent issue. The inherent issue is actually the systems that it's built on, because now everything is mid, so it's also just uninteresting to watch or observe, you know, or to even play.
What's different about these compared to maps is that we only get one version before the next game comes out. Whereas with maps, we get 5 or 6 per game. So now instead of waiting until the next map for a brand new experience,
also very true.
We now have to wait for the next game entirely.
I've always said, like, why is Zombies not a different crew every single Zombies map, like Mob of the Dead? It's sad that, like, we have to stick with these 4 lackluster characters every single game, where it's like, if it was actually built like how it was in BO2, you'd have a new crew and new character set and new storyline, new environment, everything for each Zombies map. I think that's where Zombies really excelled back in the day, to be honest.
Because now the maps themselves don't seem to change much at all. You know, I posed the observation before on the difference between Nocturne Totem and Origins. And now I'm going to ask you the same question, except for Shadows of Evil and Forsaken from Cold War. With essentially the same amount of maps in between the two. In fact, I think a little bit more actually. How much has Zombies evolved from Shadows of Evil to Forsaken?
Very little.
None. In fact, I would say it's actually gone backwards. The maps have barely changed at all. All it seems now is that every new map is just a reskin of the one to come before it. But what has changed are all these little accessory things we get to play around with before the game even starts.
But that even, like, the meta itself takes away from the sandbox elements in COD Zombies. Because, like I said, why would you ever run Frost Blast when Ether Shroud is just the meta?
Now, don't get me wrong. This is not to say that things like Gobblegums and loadouts and weapon customization are all bad. I mean, personally, I like Gobblegums just as much as the next guy. But I think putting so much focus on them and allowing them to become as important as what they are now was a mistake.
I agree.
Because it took away a lot of the creativity and importance of the maps themselves. Now, would it be fair to say that this is the sole cause of Zombies going downhill? No, I mean, there are plenty of other factors, as there always is. Things like awful point systems, bad marketing, bad game mechanics.
Very true.
I mean, you could make a
Warzone integration.
But in saying that, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the importance that was put on these things like Gobblegums, weapon loadouts, customization, all these accessory things may have diverted the necessary attention away from these important factors in the game mode and meant they didn't get the focus and attention that they probably should have. Now, before I end the video,
I also just want to say that I believe that most of that is Activision's doing. Like, I know so many people get upset with, like, Kevin Drew because of, like, the zombie maps in BO6. And while I will say I do like the BO6 maps more than Cold War, I also think like the Cold War wonder weapons are kind of better than what we have in BO6 so far. They were more innovative, more interesting. And it's just that like kind of lack of just like storyline first in a way is kind of what is kind of putting zombies back. There's really nothing to like latch onto or really care about unless you're someone that likes playing for camo grinding. And that's not every zombies player. That's taking what zombies used to be with all these different audience pools and basically segregating it to the one core version, which is basically mainly Warzone players, which is why I think so many OG zombie players are not really enjoying COD anymore.
There is actually a silver lining to all this, and that's the map Terminus.
Yeah.
Currently the latest released zombies map, and I have to say, this seems like a step in the right direction.
And while I do think Terminus and Citadel Day More were incredible narratives and incredible stories, it just goes to show that there is definitely that lack of like what has happened between this map and the Tomb. And now we're also getting Shattered Veil coming out, and the hype is extremely low in my opinion, just because they're really trying to break through all of the veil in terms of like the storylines. But it's like when a lot of people only hear that the Wunderwaffe and the Ray Gun Mark II are coming back, it doesn't really get a lot of OG zombie players excited. And so I really hope that Black Ops 6 can end off strong, but I doubt it, and especially if this Black Ops 2 zombie sequel has any of these Warzone mechanics, I think it's going to be disastrous.
I mean, the map is actually the first one to catch my interest in a long time, which is saying something. It is quite unique in the way that it's got these little islands spread out that you're able to go out to and explore.
Yeah, listen, I pay respect towards Terminus and Citadel. I think these are two of the best zombies maps we've received since BO4, but I will say, I don't know what's happened since, like where the map quality has definitely taken a nosedive for absolutely no reason. And the narrative as well with the AI inclusion and the voice actors. It's just really sad because now we're getting in premise for this next Black Ops 2 sequel. And it's like, will that even matter at this point? I don't think so.
Before in a zombies map. And it's also just got that zombies feel to it as well, which I don't think we've had for a while either.
Yeah.
So this is the sort of thing I would personally like to see more of. Just more focus on making the maps unique. And
I think the only way we make zombie maps unique now is we get rid of the crafting table, get rid of armor plates, get rid of tier 3 pack-a-punch, get rid of rarities. Honestly, the two things I probably hate the most are tier 3 pap and rarities, and then the old point system. If that is truly what happens, I think a BO2 sequel would be incredible. And also, I think we should just get rid of Gobblegums. A BO2 sequel should not have Gobblegums. Gobblegums came in BO3. It doesn't even like sequentially make sense for that to be a thing.
Interesting themselves.
Right?
Yes, have these extra things like Gobblegums and loadouts, but make sure the maps do get the preferential treatment.
Listen, I don't even think loadouts is that big of a problem. BO4 had loadouts and it was fine. I think it's just making it so that there isn't a way that you instantly spawn in with the meta. That was a big issue with the BO4 specialist system. So will they ever do this? I doubt it. I doubt it because Call of Duty Zombies now is catered towards a Warzone audience, and that is who they want to ultimately benefit.
Thank you all for watching, and I'll see
you. Video XD, ladies and gentlemen, incredible video. Will Call of Duty Zombies ever change for the better? I don't think Warzone will let it.